Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the spectacular youngster, Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. What's going on today, buddy? A lot of Big Ten news, a lot of college basketball news. Bet you're all excited.
Well, the world of college basketball probably isn't that excited. I meant to kind of mention this topic that we're going to start the show with a couple weeks ago, because that's when I heard real grumblings about it, and now it's like, lists have come out of players getting money and whatnot. So now it's really rearing its ugly head as to what has gone on potentially. Nothing's, I guess, 100% solidified, set in stone. But for me, things are good. Been a chill day. But yeah, the world of college basketball not doing too well. I know you're feeling more than just a little bit under the weather. So we hope to make this show certainly not 2 hours. It's not going to be that. But yeah, Big Ten tournament is set as far as the seedings go. That starts this Wednesday. We're recording this on February 26th. It's February 28th that the Big Ten tournament starts, which is a Wednesday, and play goes through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is March 4th, before basically every other conference tournament takes place for the next week.
Which is a total flip-flop. I mean, the Big Ten used to be the last tournament played.
Yep.
Again, people messing with my stuff. I'm an old guy. I don't like change. Why are you messing with it? I don't know if the Big Ten, and we'll just get right into it. I mean, I know you mentioned, I guess I'm going to throw this out there. You mentioned I'm under the weather. I told you I'm having headache problems, and it kind of relates to what we talk about on our show with concussions. And so I do want to tell young people out there, when you have concussions, take them seriously, because that's what I'm kind of dealing with right now. I have headaches at least 4 days a week. And I think I told you, youngster, I had at least 6 concussions playing soccer, at least. And I never got proper treatment for them. Back in the 80s when I played, it was deemed as a headache, take some aspirin, rest, and when you feel better, play. So I'm telling all the young people out there, or all the parents out there that have kids, what I'm dealing with today, usually don't complain too much. I'm complaining about this one. And it's due to that fact. So I guess I had to do a little public service announcement, youngster, that if you have kids that are playing, you're a young kid, get these concussions treated properly. Because what I'm dealing with today is not fun. But I'm going to trudge through the show. I love talking sports. If I just stop talking, just take over, youngster. That's all I'm going to say. But back to my other point is I don't like to change. And maybe the Big Ten, and I want to maybe the Big Ten, youngster, thought if we play it early, then that will help our conference. I don't know. I thought playing it at the end, it's the last thing the committee sees, last tournament on, I thought that would help. I don't know why they've changed it to the first one being played of the power conferences. Do you? I mean, what is your logical thought here? I don't see a logical thought process to this by the Big Ten.
No, I don't either. It's played in Madison Square Garden, and I guess before getting into that, your concussion stuff and what you go through, and you saying you never really complain, you don't ever complain. Now you are, and I think it's worth it every once in a while to have something like that come up on this show, and it's like, hey, concussions are a real thing. It's not just, you can get a few concussions from football. Your life expectancy maybe drops a couple of years, but in the end you can be a, $20-30 million a year player. And, is it worth it to shave a few years off the end of your life? For a lot of people that go into it, they say, yeah. But, you can very easily not very easily. There are very few that make $20 to $30 million a year doing what they do in athletics, let alone in life in general. But there are far more cases like you, Troy, where you play high school, you play collegiately, maybe you coach collegiately. I think you're pretty successful in terms of just an overall soccer career and what you've done with the sport in general for you. And so I think your case is much more likely than a case like an Aaron Rodgers, where you go to a Power 5 school and you get the scholarship and you go to school for free and you go for a few years, and then you get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, and then you become this all-world superstar quarterback. I mean, those stories just basically never happen. That's why there's only, quote unquote, maybe so to say, 15 good quarterbacks in the league. There are a lot more stories like yours, Troy, where in the end, does athletics, does it make your life better? Yeah, I'm sure it did. And I'm sure you wouldn't be where you are today without it. But at the same time,
I will say this. I don't want to interrupt your point, but to a quick point there, did athletics help me? I think it opened up a lot of doors for me.
Right.
It allowed me to get a lot of connections. And I took it, I took it to the collegiate level. I took it to the coaching side, which I opened up even more doors. So it can open up doors. And again, I wanted to throw it out there because when I deal with these things, I just want people that are playing now or parents of children. I'm not saying don't play. I don't regret it. I'd go out and play, and I'd play the same way, youngster. I was a hard-nosed. I went for every ball, and that's part of that's me. I'm not discouraging that. What I'm saying here is I never got proper treatment for my concussions, ever, because there wasn't a lot going on back in the 80s. They didn't really know. It was like, oh, okay, take some rest. Don't sleep at night, in case there's some brain injuries. But they didn't do the things they do now. And so I just want people to be aware, parents, people playing, if you get concussed, take the time. You don't need to rush yourself back on the field. I did, Kevin. I went back. I remember playing my junior year. I played 2 weeks with a headache, and I shouldn't have played the rest of the year. I played 2 more weeks in just a constant headache for 2 weeks, 24 hours a day. I should have been resting. I shouldn't have been running around kicking a soccer ball and hitting my head with the ball on top of it again.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought it up today, because today's headache, it's really a pain in my rear, and it's really annoying, and I told you, it's making me irritable. And it said I'll get through the show. And so I thought, what a great time for a PSA announcement. Let people know, just get the concussions looked at. So I wanted to interrupt back to your point. It did. Playing athletics opened up so many doors for me. I don't regret it. I would do it all over again. So continue, youngster.
Yeah, no, that's for me on that. The Big Ten tournament, I mean, I don't know when it gets exactly finalized as to where the Big Ten tournament gets played. I don't know when that happens. I don't know if that's before, like, the New York Knicks regular season schedule for 2017-18 season gets released. I don't know if it's afterwards, and it's like, hey, okay, well, we know the Knicks are not going to be playing in Madison Square Garden at home for these, this weekend stretch, and maybe just it so happened that this weekend or next weekend, when the Big Ten tournament usually takes place, Madison Square Garden was not going to be available, and maybe it was, so maybe it's a scheduling issue. I have no idea.
It probably is, and they should have just kept playing in Indianapolis, Kevin, because I guarantee there's no scheduling conflicts down there. Had to throw that in there. People know that listen to the show that I'm a little PO'd about this being played in Madison Square Garden. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. No. So I don't have an answer as to how it exactly goes down. I doubt it's for, hey, we think the conference will be better if we do it this way. I doubt that's the final reason as to why this is. But I wanted to start the show with this, Troy, before we get into basically the Big Ten tournament. And very briefly skimming through the top 25, the newest AP top 25. Miles Bridges was on this list of, basically there's ASM Sports, and there's shoe companies paying players for the most part to basically shoe companies are paying players to wear their shoes. And I have a friend who lives outside Milwaukee, and Diamond Stone, who's in the NBA now. He was a player at Maryland, I believe, a year ago. And he was a top, if not top 10, top 15 overall recruit last year as a freshman. And he went to play at Maryland, and I'm not saying Maryland paid him to go there. He's a kid out of Milwaukee. But so he knows that in high school, my friend knows that in high school, Under Armour paid him, I don't know how many, it was tens of thousands of dollars, I believe, if I remember correctly, for him to basically wear Under Armour shoes throughout his senior year of high school. So he went and played with a different team that I think was sponsored by Under Armour, and so that's how Under Armour basically took Diamond Stone under their wing and said, here, we'll pay you money to basically wear our shoes, play for this travel team, and so that's what he did. And so is that why, and I think there were grumblings of this a year ago, if I'm not mistaken, Maryland's basketball team has a deal with Under Armour, I'm pretty sure. And is that why a guy like Diamond Stone left Milwaukee and not joined Michigan State, not joined Purdue, not joined Michigan, not joined Wisconsin, and he went to Maryland? I don't know. I don't know that. But in any case, yeah, Maryland is sponsored by Under Armour. But so in general, that's what's mainly happening here. There are also reports of guys like Sean Miller in Arizona, the head coach, paying a star player like DeAndre Ayton, who's going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft this year. He's a freshman. He's a 7-foot big who's ridiculous. He was paid $100,000 to go to Arizona. That's almost concrete. None of this is fully 100% concrete, but there was a list that came out of players that basically got paid, whether it's through shoe companies, whether it's through coaches, programs, boosters, whatever it is. There's basically a list that came out this past week, and like I said, a couple of weeks ago, I heard that all of this was going to be coming out soon. Did not mention it on this show. Of course, now here we are later reporting on it. But Miles Bridges of Michigan State was on that list. There's no other main Big Ten name. At least when I took my quick glance at the list, I didn't go all the way through the list. I saw some key names. I saw some dollar figures as to how much they were paid. But with Miles Bridges, the report was that his mother had a meeting with a big wig at ASM Sports over the summer, I believe it was. And his mom basically got a free dinner out of it. It was like a $70, $80 dinner, and also $400 in advance of that meeting. Now, that's it. That's what it is. It's not as though Miles Bridges was paid.
You want to know what, though, youngster? That you can say
yeah.
That's it. That's an NCAA rules violation.
Oh, yeah. That's why it's a big deal.
I mean, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered if they brought her to McDonald's and got her on the dollar menu.
Right.
You cannot buy parents anything.
Yep.
And that's a rules violation. You could have went and you could have had a buy one, get one free. You could have bought your own, gave her the free one. That's a rules violation.
Yep.
So, yeah, it doesn't matter. And that's the funny thing. I hear the big money, and everybody, as we get into this show could go long because I talked yesterday, one of our followers on LinkedIn, Alan, I saw him personally yesterday. He asked me, we got into about a 20-minute conversation about paying athletes. I'll share some of that on the show today. The thing with this is everybody's talking about the big money that Miles Bridges gets and all this and these players and $100,000. It doesn't matter if it's $100,000 or $1. It could be $1. That's illegal. You can't give anything to anybody from the program, to anybody involved. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's $100,000. I know that everybody, it makes their jaw drop. But $1 to somebody would constitute a rules violation. I wanted to throw that out there so people understand. Just because you're seeing the list with thousands upon thousands of dollars, yeah, it's outrageous. But the rule violation is any form of compensation, even dinner. You cannot give somebody free dinner. You know, if I did it with my recruits, I couldn't pay for parents. I couldn't do those things. The dinners that had to be provided were through the dining hall. I couldn't go off campus and bring a recruit to a steakhouse. Just couldn't do it. And I couldn't even do it out of my own pocket. It had to be sponsored, and it had to be through the cafeteria or a dining service on campus. That's the way that the rule works. So I wanted to throw that out there, Kevin, because I think a lot of people are getting caught up in all these big dollars and it'll lead to something I'm going to say later. about what seems minuscule, a free meal, is a rules violation, but it's going to go to something I'm going to bring up later when we talk about this.
No, yeah, that's a great point, because I laugh when people are like, oh my God, look at North Carolina basketball and how much they're cheating and how much they can get their basketball players to go to these specialized courses where they get free A's. That's terrible. Obviously, a rules violation. It's ridiculous. But me as a Duke basketball fan, for me to say I think Coach K has never done anything wrong. I don't think that any Duke boosters have paid any players. I don't think any shoe companies have paid any Duke recruits to go to Duke. I don't think anything has gone wrong ever. Of course there has. I mean, I'd be stupid to think that Duke would be 100% clean. And there's been some names to Duke players on this list, and whether that's Coach K dishing it out of his pocket, I probably doubt it. If he has, okay, that doesn't shock me if Coach K has done it. I think he's a good guy. Does he know of possible things that have gone on with shoe companies or free meals given out from boosters? Maybe. I don't know. If he has, it would not surprise me at all. But so it's just funny to me when people are like shaming on other programs for what goes down. It's like, if you think your favorite collegiate program, no matter the sport, is 100% clean in what they do, I don't know what to tell you, because I think whether it's going through an extra practice time, sending extra letters, sending extra texts during times when you're not supposed to text prospects, paying for a free McDonald's meal, like you mentioned, Troy, all of these are rules violations. It doesn't have to be the coach handing out $100,000 to a recruit. That's Ole Miss, that's Sean Miller and DeAndre Ayton. Those are rare rule-breaking circumstances. I think most of them is like this, where it's like Miles Bridges' mom got a $400 payment and a free meal, basically. I mean, that's what is supposedly that has happened. Miles Bridges, anyway, to get to my point, Miles Bridges was asked about it after the game against Wisconsin when Michigan State won that game 68-63. They became the number 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament from winning that game. But after the game, Miles Bridges was asked about it because I think it was a day or two before that in which that report came out. And Bridges' mother, that's when this rumor started, was a couple days prior. Bridges didn't know if he was ever going to play again as a Spartan, but the NCAA, I believe, did an investigation on it, and the MSU compliance office did an investigation on it. They said, it's false, but I don't know. I don't know how you randomly come up with dollar amounts and bringing a person's mom into it if it's never happened. Again, I'm not to say that Bridges' mom took a free meal and money or not, but I think most of these cases are like this, where it is $400. I was just scrolling through the list, and yeah, there are your occasional $100,000, $20,000 cases, but the majority of them were under $1,000. And again, not to say that that's better than $100,000 taking it and cheating, but like you said, Troy, not all of these are monstrous dollar amounts. There are some, for sure, on this report, but that's the one involving Miles Bridges. He denied everything. That's why he's been playing, is because he has been cleared of it. It's not to say that it'll never resurface, but as of right now, as of Tom Izzo's knowledge, as of Miles Bridges' knowledge, going into the Big Ten tournament, he's perfectly fine, ready to go, ready to play out the rest of the year. So I wouldn't worry about it too much if you're a Michigan State fan, but if stuff eventually comes out in the future, then maybe we'll talk about it again. But as of now, he's basically cleared to keep playing. But that's basically the latest report that's, going through college basketball, all these coaches, all these programs, all these players getting paid. Again, not all of them are monstrous dollar amounts, but 1 cent is, if taken for free and taken the wrong way, taken in general, then it's cheating, according to the NCAA. So that's what has sparked the most recent debate of should college players be paid.
Hey.
But, yeah, go ahead, Troy.
I was going to throw something out. So I wanted to this topic alone, you and I could probably talk about 7 hours. But I wanted to throw something out here because and get people's thoughts. Find us on Twitter at TroyRobert967, at KidCunny, KIDCUNI. You see the list, Kevin. You see free meals. You see a couple $100 here, $1,000 there. You look at where a lot of basketball players come from, and a lot of times it is a family that is coming from hard times. A lot of times when you're looking at the guys that are getting paid and taking these payouts, and I just look at it from that standpoint that the demographic of a lot of these athletes, they see it as a way out, and a lot of time $400 to a family in need is like winning the lottery. It really is. And so when I was talking to Alan yesterday, he flat out asked me what I thought about college athletes getting paid. And I said they should to a certain extent, not the extent of $100,000. But when you look at it, I was a college athlete. I coached college athletics. You spend so much time to do the thing that you love, which is play your sport. But on top of that, your coaches are expecting you to show up at every class and get good grades, and so is the NCAA. You have to remain academically eligible. And so I know a lot of athletes don't take classes seriously, but I'll say this, Kevin. When you look at Division III, Division II, even Division I, a lot of these people, now I won't say guys, I'll say people, men and women, realize playing at the next level and making that buku dollars is not going to happen. They care about school. So they're going to go and they're going to study. So when they do that, they're putting, think back to your days in college, Kevin. How many hours a week did you study? And then think of your extracurriculars. I would say what? Average college student spending at least 6 to 10 hours studying a week on a normal week?
Yeah.
I mean, just a normal week. I'm not talking about finals week or anything like that. But a normal week, 6 to 10 hours outside of class. All right, so now if you're an athlete, throw in 2 hours a day for practice. There's another 10 hours. And then film study, if you're in a sport that requires film, training room sessions, rehab sessions, you're throwing in another hour, 2 hours there. Even if you wanted to work, how are you going to work? You're not going to have any time to rest. So I believe that every college student athlete should have an opportunity to get some sort of stipend. And my solution to this is very simple. You probably even know what an EFC is, Kevin, from going to school. It's the expected family contribution. Everybody's got to fill out a FAFSA one. Let me tell you, everybody that gets a full ride to a school, they still have to fill one out too. Because that school is going to see if there was any free money due to them, and if there was, it's coming to the school, and it's not going toward that scholarship. That's how that works. So all you have to do now is set up some kind of stipend grid for a student athlete, and here's how you base it. You don't base it on skill level. You base it on that expected family contribution number, and wherever that falls in the scale, that's the stipend that you receive for being a college athlete and not being able to work during the season or even out of season. Out of season is just as bad. You got to study, because there's one thing in financial aid that student athletes can't take advantage of, which is work-study. So a normal student that goes to campus, and I don't know if you had work-study, Kevin, but you can be eligible for work-study. So you work for the school or some capacity in the school and get a check every week. So a student athlete, based on that EFC, and the NCAA can set that stipend wherever they want. But think about an extra $100 to $200 to a family who's let's say this kid comes from a single-parent family. It can be a single mom or a single dad, 2, 3, 4 brothers, scraping to pay the bills. That parent cannot afford to send that student athlete even $20 to go get a pizza.
Right.
So if you base a stipend off the expected family contribution, so the lower that contribution, the higher your stipend. And the higher your expected family contribution, which means, I'll air quote, you rich folks, your kid's probably not getting much of a stipend because mommy and daddy can write a check. Sorry. Yeah, it sounds unfair. It is unfair. Because a lot of the people taking money are from families where $400 is winning the lottery. So that's my idea, Kevin. I know this is a Big Ten show, but we got off on this thing about paying athletes, and it's huge news right now in the world of college athletics. I wanted to bring it up because when you look at that idea, it is kind of fair that way. But then anything that goes on outside of the shoe companies and boosters, yeah, that's illegal. Still illegal. Still illegal. You can't take extra money. But this way, it's now legal for student athletes to receive some kind of income while they're in school so they can go hang out with their buddies, go get a pizza, go to the movies, put gas in their car, buy a pair of shoes, buy shirts, whatever they want. But they're getting some kind of compensation for all of the time that they're putting in where it doesn't allow them to go out and work or be eligible for that work study. And it's not unfair to the other students in the school because a lot of them are eligible or their EFC does not allow for it for that work-study program that the federal government has set up for college students based on an EFC number. I'll shut up there, get your quick thoughts, and then we can move into the AP Top 25.
No, yeah, what you brought up, I like the idea of it. Like you said, if your parents are rich, you shouldn't get as much money because you can get more money from your parents from within. That's not, I wouldn't call it unfair. I'd rather receive $200 a month as opposed to $500 if my parents are rich. I'd rather have that than counting on the NCAA to say, hey, here's $500, and my family still be poor back home. So I don't think that's unfair at all. I like that idea. I guess my only thought on it as far as something possible, and maybe I guess I'll get your opinion on it, Troy, before we move into actual basketball. What if, and I don't know if you can go by sport, by coach, by conference, by whatever, but like you said, you can lay out a map for a week for a student athlete and how much time they spend in the sport. And so, like you said, between everything going on in life, including time spent on the sport itself, as a collegiate student athlete, how much time do you really have for an on-campus job or off-campus job, whatever? You don't, like you said. So is it impossible to say that should these players get paid for the set, I'll just throw a random number out there, 25 hours a week that they spend in their sport, whether it's film study, practice, game time, whatever. Say it's 25 hours a week. I could be completely off on that. But let's say it's 25 hours a week. If the minimum, I can't think of the word for whatever reason, right? Minimum wage is set at however much. If that's how much they make, then why not that be kind of what counts toward how much they get paid? So if minimum wage in your state, let's say, is $8 an hour, and you have to work, quote unquote, 25 hours a week because you're a student athlete in your sport, then you get paid around $200 every week, I guess that would be, because you're technically at work, so to say. So that would be your paycheck, I guess, from the NCAA every single couple weeks, month, however you want to put it. Would that be a good idea, Troy? Would that be a bad idea? Is it flawed? It's just something that came to my mind because if there's a set amount of hours that a coach can say, hey, my student athletes are putting 25 hours a week, the minimum wage is $8 an hour here, that's how much they should get paid because that's how much this is basically their job in school aside from studies. Is that stupid? Is that smart? What do you think?
No, it's similar to what I'm saying with the EFC. I mean, there's a certain number of contact hours a coach can have with a student or a student athlete. So, yeah, I mean, that would fly too. I mean, if you think, Kevin, what we just did in 20 minutes, why hasn't any of this stuff been thrown out there? Yeah. You know why it hasn't been thrown out there? It's because of the boosters, and it's because they want to attract those big-time players. But what we just talked about in 15 minutes are two logical ideas where you can get student athletes money. Because I'm going to tell you this. Even if one of our ideas went into fruition and happened, you're still going to have the list that you looked at 2 years from now.
Yeah.
It's not ending. You can pay college athletes. It's not going to end. The NCAA can do whatever they want as far as rules and the rule book and paying players, but to just flat out say, yeah, you can pay them whatever, to me, that's not fair. I don't care if you're a 5-star recruit. You shouldn't get paid to go play college athletics in the sense of $100,000. Should you get paid to be able to go out and do things that your parents can't do and provide for you? I agree. Your idea actually probably makes more sense than mine, because then everybody gets the same shake. Doesn't matter if you're an All-American. Doesn't matter if you're riding the pine, you redshirted, and you never see the field. You're still putting the time in, and you're getting as much as Johnny 5-star. I like that idea, actually, Kevin. And maybe you can find a way to take your idea and then mold in the EFC number with it for an extra contribution based on that. Like, you could actually get a little bit more. If your EFC is 0, which happens a lot when you're coming from a family, that does not make a lot of money, that's where Pell Grants come in and all of these things come in. So if you're in dire need, maybe you could get an extra stipend with the EFC contribution. I mean, I like these ideas, Kevin, and my point here is not to sit here and say, man, look how smart Kevin and I are. It's like you and I just talked about something logical to help student athletes while they're in school. Why hasn't anything like this been thrown around? Because what we're talking about is not going to bankrupt any college or university. No way, no how. What's going to corrupt college athletics is what we talked about in the beginning of the show. Sean Miller giving some kid $100,000. That is what's corrupting it. And it's not going to stop it. So let's move on, Kevin. We could beat this into the bush for another 5 hours.
Yeah, I know we could. Moving to the February 26th rankings. In the past, I've said, hey, Week 12 AP rankings, Week 14, Week 17, that's what it is, Week 17. But, again, these rankings come out February 26th, the newest AP rankings. Big Ten Tournament, again, February 28th on a Wednesday, ends on a Sunday, as it always does, except this year it's a week earlier. It's March 4th. So here's the latest AP rankings. Again, this is the AP. This is not NCAA Selection Committee. This is the AP. It's a completely different set of rankings and how these group of people view these teams. But so Michigan State stayed at 2. Purdue, I think, moved up from 9 to 8. And I think Ohio State and Michigan moved up a little bit as well. Ohio State's up to 13, and Michigan's 15. I was curious how others receiving votes would go, because Penn State and Nebraska have kind of flip-flopped in the last few weeks. But in the regular season finale, Penn State went to Nebraska, I believe it was. Nebraska won that game fairly convincingly. And so Penn State was receiving votes a week ago. Nebraska was not. This week, Nebraska beats Penn State, and neither team is now receiving votes. And in Joe Lunardi's newest bracket, he has Penn State, Michigan State and Purdue still as 2 seeds like he did a week ago. Ohio State still a 4 seed like he did a week ago. And Michigan went down from a 5 seed to a 6 seed. Not exactly sure why there. But in any case, 4 solid Big Ten teams in the NCAA tournament. The 4 teams that would get in, let's say Joe Lunardi's bracket is perfect, the ESPN bracketologist. Let's say his bracket's perfect, which most of these guys that do this on a year-long basis get like 67 to 68 teams right usually. But seeding's not perfectly right, but obviously usually in the ballpark. But so Nebraska and Penn State, Nebraska, I believe, was in his, I guess I'll double-check it right now just to make sure. I think Nebraska was in the first 4 out, so they would be team like 70. Yes, they're the 3rd team out of the tournament right now, so they're right there on the bubble. Penn State's not even in the next 4 out. They're not even first 4 out, not next 4 out, so they're like, probably 10th on the list. Teams looking in to get into the NCAA tournament, and Joe Lunardi could be wrong. Usually he is wrong on a team or two every year, just like anyone is. But in general, Penn State losing that game at Nebraska really hurt them. Just in terms of resume, it was a game against another bubble team, and Penn State had the opportunity to pull off a win there. But now going into the Big Ten tournament, the last 3 games, loss at Purdue, loss to Michigan at home, and loss at Nebraska. They were 19-9, now they're 19-12. They were 9-6 in conference, now they're 9-9. We talked about it a year ago, how Iowa went 10-8, and you could say a stronger Big Ten conference. But this year, Penn State 9-9, doesn't have 20 wins overall. Certainly has work to do in the Big Ten tournament, which we'll talk about. But I guess your thoughts, Troy, on they're almost solidly being 4 teams in the in the NCAA tournament, but Nebraska's right there on the outside, maybe on the inside, but firmly on the bubble, while Penn State probably has some work to do.
I think they both got some work to do.
Yeah,
because you got to remember Lenardi, and like you said, he could be wrong. I mean, he may be wrong about a team or two, because there's going to be a surprise team that wins a conference tournament that shouldn't be in that tournament.
Right.
And then what do? We talk about this. You talk about these mid-major conferences where you've got your dominant regular season champion, and I'll use UW Green Bay for an example. That's where I'm from. You know, UW Green Bay, mid-major. They made the tournament a few years by winning their tournament. I believe they got an at-large bid 1 year, Kevin. I think I'd have to go back and look, and that's back when I was at Whitewater, actually. The thing is, you get this dominant team. Let's say UW Green Bay, and this isn't this year, so this is all fictitious, folks. They go 25-4. Cruise through the regular season, top seed in their conference, get to their conference final and get upset. So that would put them at, 27 or 28-5.
Right.
Maybe not receiving votes, but the committee may look at them and say, you know what? Yeah, they're a mid-major, but look what they did in the non-conference, and yeah, they maybe lost to Marquette. I'll use another team. Lost to Marquette, maybe lost to Minnesota, even though Minnesota didn't have a great year. But they lost to some of these big-time schools, and they didn't get embarrassed. Maybe we'll give them an at-large bid. Maybe we'll give them a 12 seed. Well, then what happens to, Wisconsin, Milwaukee? Let's say that's who upset them because they're in the same conference. Well, then they get the automatic bid, but now this dominant regular season team, they're also now, they fall into that last 4 out or that bubble selection.
Right.
And you've now got to compare them to a Nebraska or a Penn State. And who's going to get more love? A team that dominated at the mid-major level or a Big Ten team that struggled with consistency? I would almost go with the mid-major that was consistent all year and got upset in one game. Whereas Nebraska and Penn State were so inconsistent throughout the year, they look great 1 second. They look like they're pooing the bed the next. You don't know what team you're going to get in the tournament. With this dominant mid-major team, they've cruised, yes, to the level of competition, not the same as the Big Ten. I understand that. But if it's one of those dominant conference teams that took care of business day in and day out and got upset in one game in the conference tournament, I would have to seriously consider putting them in over a Nebraska or a Penn State. And it very well could happen, youngster. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's very possible because I failed to finish my point as I was talking. If 4 Big Ten teams got in, Joe Lunardi's next lowest Power 5 conference would be the Big East with 6. And then you've got, the ACC with 10 and Big 12 and SEC in there, which are having good years this year in general. The Big Ten is seen RPI-wise. It's seen by many as the worst conference in college basketball this year. So if you're 9-9 in conference, like Penn State, that's not good, especially when you don't have 20 wins right now. You've got to rack up multiple wins against hopefully multiple NCAA tournament going teams. I'll use that as quality wins. And it's pretty amazing that Nebraska could be in this, first 4 out on the outside looking in. And they're 8-1 in the last 9 games. So the issue for Nebraska, 22-9 overall, 13-5 in conference, 4 seed in the Big Ten, double bye, and they could be left out. That's, again, we've talked about Nebraska throughout this year, kind of schedule-based. They played Ohio State one time. They played Michigan one time. They played Michigan State one time. That's it. I mean, they played Purdue one time. I mean, any really good Big Ten team they could have played twice, they didn't. Literally. Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan, Purdue, they played them once. They didn't play any of those teams twice. They played Penn State twice, they split. So they racked up wins. I mentioned it, 8-1 in the last 9 against Rutgers, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana, Penn State. All of them are not going to the NCAA tournament. Most likely.
Wow, you rattled off quite the schedule there, youngster.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, Nebraska's 22-9. Yes, they're 13-5 in conference. It's insane. Because any team in the Big Ten last year that won 10 games made it outside of Iowa that finished 19-15 overall. So again, you need to get to that 20 mark basically to have a chance. But 13-5 a year ago in the Big Ten, I'll just look at it now. 13-5 a year ago, that would be the 2 seed last year in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, that's how impressive Nebraska has been in terms of overall record. Who they're beating, that's what the selection committee is considering. That matters. Quality wins matter. How many teams have they beaten that are going to the NCAA tournament this year? They beat Michigan once in their only matchup by 20. That's huge. Who else have they beaten that's going to the tournament? I'm looking right now. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. They beat Michigan one time. That's their only team that they've beaten that's getting into the NCAA tournament. They lost to Michigan State. Actually, where is Michigan State? Oh, yeah. They lost to Michigan State by 29 points. They lost to Purdue by 12, and they lost to Ohio State by 5. So they, haven't done all that well against quality opponents, a.k.a. teams making the NCAA tournament for sure. So, yeah, they probably have some work to do as well. And I guess I'll get into what the Big Ten tournament looks like in terms of seeding, unless you've got anything else to add, Troy.
No, not a thing. Not a thing. I thought you brought up a good point there. I just wanted to bring that up because Nebraska's got a lot of work to do. Even if everything fell into place like Lunardi has it, they're still on the outside looking in, and you know that there's going to be an upset in one of these tournaments.
Yep.
At the mid-major level, and then that drops another team, not necessarily into the next 4 out. They might be completely out. But as far as the committee's concerned, you've got to look at it.
Bubble teams. Yeah.
Yeah,
there's
adding
going to be
another bubble team. You're right.
Yep.
And it all depends on that mid-major. And if you think of it, Kevin, a lot of these mid-majors are the ones going to the big-time schools early on in the season because they're getting paid to go there. They're getting money for their school, so they'll go to a Duke and get embarrassed by 30 points. And every once in a while, they'll play that team tough. And so if it's a team that did that and only lost to one of these power schools by 10, I mean, you have to give them an argument against the team. You just rattled off this amazing strength of schedule for Nebraska. Wow, that was pretty tough the last 10. You know what I'm saying? So Nebraska they've got to win some things in the Big Ten. That's what we're going to talk about. So roll on into it. Go through the tournament. We'll talk about some of these teams and what they got to do.
Yeah. Here's just a couple examples, too, with Nebraska before I get into things. They beat Long Beach State by 5 earlier this year. They lost to UCF by 9. They beat Eastern Illinois by 4. If it just so happened that Eastern Illinois were to win their conference tournament or Eastern Illinois is this juggernaut, and they ended up 29-5, like you mentioned, Troy, and losing in the final in an upset, and a team like Eastern Illinois played Nebraska really tough, or a team like UCF beats Nebraska like they did in November, and it's like, okay, we've got this dominant UCF team, which I know they're not, but let's just say something like that happen, you can have one of these crazy 29-5 teams that lose in the final, and it's like, okay, what'd they do out of conference? Oh, wait, they beat Nebraska. They beat another bubble team. So that can absolutely happen as well. Basically, you're going to add at least 3 bubble teams to this list by the time all the conference tournaments are done, because I think there's some crazy amount. I'm not even going to throw a number out there, but there's a lot of conference tournaments to be played, and there will be a number of upsets, which adds the number of teams to the bubble. So if you're on the bubble right now, you have to do work, because there's going to be other bubble teams being added just automatically, because not every conference tournament is going to go perfectly. So I'll get into the bracket itself, the Big Ten tournament, which, again, starts Wednesday, February 28th, ends March 4th on a Sunday. The top 4 seeds automatically go to the quarterfinal round. So you get 2 byes. Michigan State got the 1 seed. Ohio State got the 2. Purdue got the 3. Nebraska got the 4. Those 4 teams get double byes. Their first games are Friday. Don't have to worry about anything right now. The top 8, I guess, aside from Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, Nebraska, number 5 is Michigan. They get a bye. And they don't know who they're playing. They actually have to play the winner of a first-round game, which it's almost hard to have to play that first day in the Big Ten tournament. Only 4 teams do. Michigan plays the winner of Illinois, Iowa, which are the 13 and 12 seeds. Indiana got a 6 seed. They play the winner of Rutgers, Minnesota. Minnesota's 11, Rutgers 14. So those teams don't even know who they're playing yet in their first game. But then you've got 7 through 10. 7's Penn State. They got Northwestern in the second round of the tournament. Their first game, both of those teams will be playing in their first game. So 7 Penn State, 10 Northwestern, and then the 8-9 matchup is Maryland, Wisconsin. And it kind of goes, once you get past, all this craziness of the first round and these weird seedings, it's supposed to go into the quarterfinal and second round that, okay, Michigan State's the 1. They should play the 8 seed, Maryland. They play the winner of 8-9. Nebraska should play, being a 4 seed, should play the 5th seed. Ohio State's the 2. They should play the 7. Purdue the 3. They should play Indiana the 6. So it's 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5. Like it usually would. Will it happen that way perfectly? I highly doubt it, but that's the way it's supposed to go. For those just, listening to this, not looking at the bracket, certainly better to be looking at the bracket while we're talking about this, as opposed to not. But it's supposed to flow, 1 through 8 going into the quarterfinal round, and then, obviously 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, and then 1 plays 2 if everything goes out perfect. But yeah, so Michigan State's the 1, Ohio State 2, Purdue 3, Nebraska 4, Michigan 5, Indiana 6, Penn State 7, Maryland 8, Wisconsin 9, Northwestern 10, which is just crazy. 11, Minnesota, which is also crazy. 12, Iowa, 13, Illinois, 14, Rutgers. I guess, Troy, we can go through every game, not to, say that we're going to get into X's and O's and why this team's going to win. But if you want, we can give our picks. Otherwise, we can focus on a select number of teams and say, hey, this possible matchup would be interesting, or, can get into bubble talk, basically, and what teams would have to do. However you want to take it, I guess, next on this show.
Well, you look at it in these first-round games, 8-9, Maryland, Wisconsin, to me, Maryland's a younger team. Wisconsin can't score, but they just played Michigan State really tough on Sunday. And Wisconsin's actually been playing, I'll put it this way, they've been playing better basketball than they were a month ago. Could Wisconsin beat a Maryland? Yeah, they could. And then they're going to get smoked by Michigan State again. But they could win that game, and Maryland could win too and get smoked by Michigan State. I don't see Michigan State losing to an 8 or a 9. You look at some of these intriguing matchups early on, I think they'll be fun, or teams can keep their hopes alive. But I really don't, when you go through it and you look at the way the tournament's set up, anybody outside of the top, I'll even put it this way, Anybody outside of that top three, I don't see a lot of ups. I guess whoever plays Nebraska, that could be an upset game. Maybe even whoever plays Ohio State, because Ohio State hasn't been playing great. And Purdue hasn't been playing awesome either. So you might be able to see somebody get knocked off, but I don't see Michigan State really having any problem cruising through this Big Ten tournament this year. Like last year, I looked at it and said, wow, and I think I don't remember how I picked it, but I had something crazy in the Big Ten tournament championship game last year, youngster. I don't know if you remember. I might have had like a 4 versus 7 or something like that, because I thought there was more competitiveness in those top 8 seeds. Yeah. But I don't see it this year. Michigan State is by far the dominant team. Michigan, I think when you look at some consistency, yes and no. I mean, it seems like every time I talk good about a team, they start playing bad. So maybe I shouldn't talk about any teams because I jinx them. But my point here is the top of this conference is so much better than the middle. Yeah. I'm not sure if you're going to see many upsets once you get into those quarterfinal games. I mean, Nebraska could go down. Ohio State, even though they're playing poorly, they're winning games. And so unless you play a darn near perfect game and Ohio State's off, you can't just say, oh, yeah, somebody could beat Ohio State. They could, but Ohio State's got some talent. You know, they haven't been dominant, but they're out there and they're playing and they're winning games. I don't see a lot of upsets once we get to the quarterfinals, Kevin. What about you?
I think that number 2, number 3, number 4, it could be interesting, only because of what the matchups could be. Like you said, Michigan State against Maryland or Wisconsin, I expect Michigan State to do just fine. But in general, you could see number 4 seeded Nebraska playing number 5 seeded Michigan in the quarterfinal, and I absolutely think Michigan's more talented. I think you could see a quote-unquote upset there. It wouldn't even be an upset because Michigan would be favored in that game. So I could see that. Michigan has to get past either Illinois or Iowa, which I certainly expect they will. But I could see an upset there. And then I guess going into the semifinal, you would see Michigan State-Michigan, which it's Michigan State-Michigan, and Michigan can get hot. I expect Michigan State to win this whole thing. I expect Michigan State to cut down the nets in April. But Michigan State, Michigan beat Michigan State earlier this year. So do I think it's possible for Michigan to do it again? Absolutely, as long as they catch fire like they did a year ago. Michigan went to Michigan State, not that it's this huge travel thing, and put up 82 points against a really good Spartans defense. So Michigan can get it done against anybody. But, you know, also Illinois and Iowa can score. So that second round game, the first game for Michigan, it's going to be high scoring because Michigan's going to be playing a high scoring team. They're just playing 2 high scoring teams that can't play defense. So I anticipate a 92-82 game there for Michigan in their first game. But, yeah, I see Michigan going past Nebraska and playing Michigan State eventually. And then the bottom half of this bracket, Penn State beat Ohio State both times they played them this year. So just based on matchup, if, again, Penn State gets past 10-seeded Northwestern in the second round, if that happens and you see Penn State, Ohio State, it's always hard to beat teams 3 times in a season. That's a cliche. Penn State obviously can get it done against Ohio State, so especially when Penn State knows their backs are against the wall and they need to win. They need a win against a top 4-seeded team in the NCAA tournament potentially. That'd be huge for Penn State. I don't know if that'll be enough to get them off the bubble and in the tournament, to pull one upset in the Big Ten tournament, or if they need multiple. But Penn State, Ohio State, that could be very interesting to me. And then Purdue finally playing Indiana because it's Purdue, Indiana. I think that could be interesting if Indiana gets past the winner of Minnesota Rutgers. But Purdue, Indiana could be interesting. I would pick Purdue to win. So I think the quarterfinal games could be very interesting, and then Michigan State, Michigan potentially. And then who knows what happens. Penn State may be fighting for their lives against Purdue. If a crazy upset happens and you see something like Penn State, Indiana, or Ohio State and Indiana, then, you could see Ohio State just flying into the final.
You giving no love to Northwestern, youngster?
No.
No love to Northwestern in that first game?
No,
Here's the thing.
I'm not.
I'm going to give them a little bit of love. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I'm going to give them a little bit of love because they have the talent on that team.
Yeah.
And they went on that little mini hot streak, about 3 weeks ago? And now they know their season's done. They got – I'm not saying that they went into this conspiracy theory and looked at the bracket and said, hey, if we end up number 10 and we get on the bottom side of the bracket, we can get to the championship game easier than having to play against the Michigan State in the top half. But if you want to talk about a team that could potentially, if they could turn a light switch on, look at the bottom half of that bracket, Kevin. It's Northwestern. This is a team you and I thought was a solid NCAA team going into the season. Yeah, they just played like crap. But now they've got, I'll say it this way, they got the luck of the draw. They don't have to face a Michigan State or a Michigan who you look at these teams, Kevin, Purdue, they were dominant. We were just talking about how great they were a month ago. I think they're human now. They have not played well the last 6-7 games. I think Michigan might be playing better than Purdue right now. They're both up on the top part of that bracket. You look at what Northwestern, should they be able to turn a light switch on with that senior group they have and that experienced group they have, maybe they could be that magical run. There's always one every year, right? Who's to say it's not Michigan, Northwestern. But Penn State's actually been playing pretty good basketball here. They lost to Nebraska. But they strung together a few wins and are playing better. The team that you and I thought would be that sleeper NCAA team, so they got talent there. But Northwestern, on paper, has all the talent in the world to get by Penn State and then to get by Ohio State and then play Purdue. Could they get by Purdue? That's a tough one. I don't know if that's a great matchup for Northwestern. But if you look at where they're in this tournament, Kevin, they could be one and done. Penn State could beat them very easily. But they have an easier draw to get a couple wins if that makes any sense to you at all. So I'll give them a little love that they got a chance. I think Penn State's going to win the game. But I got to be unbiased here. I got to look at that team that if you wanted to look at one team in this whole tournament that has an easier road to picking up 3 wins, it's Northwestern. Penn State, Ohio State, maybe Purdue, and getting to the final. Still not going to get them in the tournament. They'd have to win it. They'd have to win the Big Ten tournament. They're definitely not getting by Michigan State. But that could be that magical run. And so on Sunday, we might be sitting here talking about, can Northwestern pull up the David and Goliath upset right here? No, they can't. But that's what the talk would be. And if you pull the blinders off, it's not, I don't want to say, hey, this is like I would bet on that. But who's to say if they didn't catch a spark and turn the plug on, that they could actually do it because they have talent. There's no way that I thought Northwestern would be seated where they're at the beginning of the year. And I will admit I'm wrong. I thought they were a solid NCAA team. I thought they were almost a shoo-in. And I think they did too, and I mentioned it many times on the show. I think that was their problem this year. They thought they just had to go out and play and would be in the NCAA tournament again. I really believe that's what happened to them. But they've got talent that they can go out and play in this conference. And, again, they pooed the bed. That's all I got.
Yeah. I'll get to these two teams quickly. Indiana, because they could be seen as a bubble team just based on being 500 in the Big Ten and 16 and 14 overall, though, is their issue. I guess they would have to beat either Rutgers, Minnesota in the second round, and then they play Purdue, and then hopefully for them they play Ohio State, although realistically it may not matter. Maybe they want the easiest road because they have to win the Big Ten tournament completely. That's my take, is they have to win the Big Ten tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. Are you different on that, Troy, with Indiana?
No, not at all. They had Any team outside of Nebraska, I'm even throwing Penn State in there. Penn State's going to have to. It'll be hard. I guess if Penn State beat Ohio, if Penn State got to the championship game, maybe then you take them. So basically, any team outside of the solid four that we've talked about, you've got to get to the championship game or win it. Like even Nebraska, they're going to have to get a signature win and get to the championship game to get in. At least that's my thought. And then Penn State, same thing. If they can make a run from where they're seated to the championship game, then seriously consider them. Outside of that, if you're not Penn State or Nebraska, you actually have to win it, including Indiana. Indiana's schedule outside of the conference was tough as nails, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You didn't win. Yeah, you played good. There's no moral victories with the committee. There's moral victories if you're matched up against another team that has a very similar resume, and all of a sudden you're looking, well, now look at, okay, these two teams are similar. Look what Indiana did in the non-conference schedule. They did a lot better. Even though they didn't win, they were more competitive, and look who they played. But for that scenario to happen, nearly impossible. Nearly impossible for Indiana to all of a sudden be on the bubble with another team exactly like them. I would say that is like me going to get out of the car and find a $100 bill on the road. It's not going to happen. So anybody outside of Nebraska and Penn State, they're going to have to win the tournament. And then my thought here, and I'll just let you continue, Nebraska and Penn State, 1-2 wins isn't going to do it. They've got to get to the conference championship game. They have to. If they don't get to the conference championship game, they're not getting in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, well, that answers the next few questions I would have. I was going to bring up Maryland as that other long shot because they could beat Wisconsin. They could beat Michigan State. They could beat Michigan. You could throw Michigan State, Michigan, or 2 quality wins, and you beat Wisconsin, whatever, and they would be in the Big Ten final. And then they play, say, Purdue and lose by 2 points. Is that good enough for Maryland? You said no. You think Maryland would have to win the whole thing, even if they beat Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Michigan before losing to Purdue, potentially.
Yep, I do.
Okay.
And part of it is you just look where they put themselves. They put themselves behind the 8 ball. If they got 3 wins, what does that give Maryland? 22 wins? Or they got 19 right now or 18?
19. They'd be 22-12. They finished 8-10 in conference, though.
and there's the problem.
Yeah.
Like I said, as far as the competitiveness of this conference, very competitive after 3. Competitive in the sense you beat everybody up. Doesn't mean you're a good team. Doesn't mean you're NCAA worthy. Competitive. Right. You're all on the same page. You're a step below right now. It's what it is. Nobody separated themselves. We talked about it at the beginning of the year. Who's going to separate themselves into that second tier? Well, the second tier became Ohio State, Michigan. I don't even want to put Nebraska in there right now because I've seen Nebraska play against better teams, way back when. They haven't played a good team in a long time. I know they got by Penn State, but is that really a quality win when you look at where Penn State is? So for Maryland to go 8-10 in the Big Ten and look at some of their losses, that's my problem, Kevin. Look at some of those losses, who they're losing to. It's not like they're wrapping up all these losses against all the top teams in the conference, and they're struggling against middle-of-the-pack teams. So, to me, even if Maryland beat Michigan State, that's not a lock to get to the NCAA tournament, not with where they're at in the conference.
Yes, I agree completely. The interesting cases more so are Nebraska and Penn State. Those are the teams completely on the bubble. Nebraska could very easily, I'll just paint this picture, that Nebraska could play Michigan in their first game. Let's say they beat Michigan, and then they play Michigan State in the semifinals. If they only beat Michigan and lose to Michigan State, I think they're on the outs. Because, again, you're only adding bubble teams, and, you pick up 1 quality victory in the Big Ten tournament at that point if you beat Michigan, lose to Michigan State. But is that good enough for Nebraska? Beating Michigan twice, you can make that case that, hey, we played Michigan twice, we beat them both times. Even in the Big Ten tournament, we beat them. Yes, we lost to this juggernaut, Michigan State, who hasn't, but we beat Michigan twice, both times we played them. So they'd have an argument. I think they'd be one of the top bubble teams at that point, but I would almost consider them out, and that's their most likely road. Although I'll say that Michigan, again, will probably be favored to beat Nebraska in the quarterfinal round. So their most likely road is one and done. And at that point, they're done. If they pick up no more signature wins and they lose to Michigan, and so they split those two games, you don't even have that to really hold on your head because you lost the more important matchup, the more recent matchup to Michigan. So you can't even point back, if you're Nebraska, to whenever they beat Michigan in December or whatever it was, because you just lost to them. So Nebraska has to at least beat Michigan and then hope and pray that a Michigan State loss is okay. If they beat Michigan and Michigan State and get to the final, I don't care if they lose by 20, I think they're in at that point. So, yeah, I think I'm with you, Troy, as long as I gathered your point correctly. If Nebraska beats, say, Michigan and Michigan State, loses in the final, I think they're in.
Yeah, I agree there, because then they have that signature win. And then they prove to the committee that, hey, yeah, we played an easy schedule, but look what we did in the Big Ten tournament. We got by 2 NCAA tournament teams. You mentioned it earlier. They don't have any wins over tournament teams right now. That win over Michigan early in the season, throw it out the window. How long ago was that? Who cares? That to me, that was so long ago. That's when my head didn't hurt. So that win to me means absolutely nothing on their resume. Nothing. And again, I've said this over and over, and I was a Nebraska supporter for a while. If you remember, I said Nebraska's playing good basketball, and I said, sorry, Cornhusker fans, I may jinx you. But now we're getting to tournament time. And now you got to start slimming this down, and you got to look at how good are these teams really? Are they NCAA tournament teams? Nebraska's at a point, you got to prove it to me now. You got to prove it to me. Here's your chance. You don't apologize for the schedule that was laid out for you. You took care of your business. Great. 13-5. Wonderful. It's not your fault that there's a bunch of crap teams in there. So now we're going to let you prove it. You can go out in this Big Ten tournament, and you can knock down almighty Michigan State and knock down to Michigan. Boom, you're in. There, you proved it to everyone. But you could lose your first game. If you do that, well, then hello, NIT, here you come. But they should win their first game if you're an NCAA tournament team. And then since your schedule wasn't dominant, now you got to go out and you just got to start your NCAA tournament against Michigan State. You win, you keep playing. You lose, you're done. That's the way you got to look at it. So that's their fate. And again, you can't apologize for the schedule, but it is what it is. And now they want to take the best teams. And does Nebraska match up against tournament teams? The answer is we really don't know, other than that they've only beaten Michigan so long ago and they lost to the other three that are getting in from the Big Ten. So if you're just looking at that, my answer is no, you're not a tournament team. You're 1-3 against tournament teams.
Yep.
And you're 12-2. You're 12-2 against teams that aren't going to make the NCAA tournament.
Right.
So yeah, you're a dominant team in that pool of bad teams. Good for you. That doesn't get you to the NCAA tournament. That's all I got.
Yeah, they also lost to Kansas by 1 point in December. So take that for what it is. It's a loss against a good team. It's also in December. So I don't think that weighs heavily one way or the other for them. Penn State, for me, they obviously have to beat Northwestern. Then they play Ohio State. They obviously have to win that game because I think they are on the outside looking in. I also want to mention this about Nebraska. It wouldn't surprise me if they were the one team that it's like, oh, Nebraska wasn't really on the bubble because they beat Michigan, lost to Michigan State in the Big Ten tournament, and they got a 10 seed. I mean, in the NCAA tournament, I could see that happening because you can say, hey, Nebraska won 14 Big Ten games this year, and they were the 4 seed in the regular season. And they didn't have any bad losses outside of Illinois, which is certainly a bad loss, but they didn't have any bad losses outside of that since even Creighton's an NCAA tournament team, since UCF, which was November 23rd. I mean, so Nebraska doesn't have many bad losses either. Literally Illinois, and then you have to go back to November. So that's just Nebraska's schedule. So it wouldn't surprise me if Nebraska, and we were kind of overanalyzing this all along, based on them being 13-5 in conference, based on them getting 23 overall wins. I could see them being that surprise team for the NCAA when they reveal the NCAA tournament, and it's like, oh, Nebraska got a 10. They're not even an 11, a 12 in the play-in games. I could see that happening. I don't think that's the case because of, like you said, Troy, 1-3 against 4 tournament teams. You could say 1-4 if you include Kansas.
And you got to see what goes on across the country. That's the thing.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't know what's going to happen in all these other conferences. Because as we talk about the Big Ten and what Nebraska needs to do and what Penn State needs to do and what Indiana or Maryland need to do, there's 2 yahoots like us talking about the ACC, talking about the SEC, and talking about those teams on the bubble from those conferences. And what if those teams make their miraculous run? Now you've added more bubbles to the pot.
Yep.
I mean, it's that is the exciting thing. To me, that's exciting. I actually, every tournament, I'm cheering for the underdog. I want the underdogs to disrupt the NCAA tournament like never before. I do it every year. I'm cheering for lower seeds to disrupt it because I love that. I just love the underdog, and I love the potential. But, in every conference, there's going to be that one run by some team. There'll be one in the Big Ten. There's going to be one in the ACC. Yeah, I mean, it may end in the quarterfinal. Like maybe it's Northwestern. They win their first game, win their second, they get to the quarterfinal. Maybe that's the run. But it's still a run. It's still that team that's being talked about. Oh, look, Northwestern made it to the quarterfinal. Who will it be in the ACC? Who's it going to be in the SEC? Who will it be in the Pac-10? There's going to be a team from all of these conferences that does something special. It may only be 2 wins, but maybe those 2 wins, if you're a bubble team, get you to 20 wins. Now, now there's another team Nebraska's got to compete against.
Yep.
But again, if everything falls into place and none of that happens, like you said, could Nebraska be slid right in there and do a 10 seed? Sure, they could. That's the joy of the NCAA tournament, Kevin.
Yeah. And if everything plays out perfectly in terms of the Big Ten and what Vegas thinks, Michigan will beat Nebraska, and Nebraska's done. And Penn State will lose to Ohio State, and Penn State's done. So there's 4 teams in the Big Ten tournament, or Big Ten making the NCAA tournament. That's what's supposed to happen in terms of, betting and lines and how strong these teams are. Matchup-wise, though, Penn State has proven they could beat Ohio State twice this year. So for Penn State, I guess I'll move to them before anything else. Penn State plays Nebraska again in the second round before they get to the quarterfinal, which would be Ohio State. Penn State has to beat Northwestern. Penn State has to beat Ohio State. And then at that point, I don't know if that's enough. You've beaten Ohio State 3 times at that point, and then if you lose to a number 2 seeded Purdue, number 2 seed NCAA tournament, Purdue is what I'm going by there. If they lose to Purdue by a couple, I don't know. 1 quality victory, does that vault Penn State ahead of 5-6 teams? Penn State might have to beat both or all 3, Northwestern, Ohio State, and then Purdue, and get to the Big Ten final. Unfortunately, just based on how their season's gone, how these last 3 games have gone for them, they had chances to pick up quality victories in the last 3 games. Purdue, Michigan, Nebraska lost all 3 of them. So now they probably do have to beat Northwestern, and they probably have to beat Ohio State, and hopefully not, but they probably do have to beat Purdue in the semifinal. I don't know about you, Troy, but I think that's what I remember from your point is that Penn State has to get to the final to solidify themselves in the NCAA tournament. And realistically, I probably think the same way, which sucks for us because I would love to see Penn State in the tournament. I'd love to see Nebraska as well. I just think both teams are not going to make it.
No, like I said, Penn State could beat or get upset by Northwestern in the first game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Penn State is that team. Yeah, they have some experience that came back from last year, but Northwestern, if you look at that game on paper, I would have to give the edge to Northwestern. If I didn't know how Northwestern and Penn State both played, if you just looked on paper, if you're an analyst from the West Coast and you're looking at Penn State Northwestern on paper, throw the records out, just look at the rosters, you would most likely pick Northwestern. They probably have more talent. But Penn State's got a lot of grit, and they're a blue-collar team. They'll go out and play hard, as is Northwestern. I'm not taking a shot at them, but Northwestern is beatable. But Northwestern can play good and could beat Penn State, a higher seed. So Penn State may not even get out of the first game. And then they got a tough road, like you said. Yeah, they've beaten Ohio State twice. Yeah, so now you're in a Big Ten tournament. Ohio State, do they have anything to really play for? Probably not, other than saying that they want to try to be Big Ten champions. I mean, they're pretty much locked into the NCAA tournament. So would that play into that game? It could, depending on how they want to coach it out. Do they want to make a hard run at the Big Ten tournament title? Which now, since it's so early, my answer to that is, yeah, you play it out as hard as you can because you got almost 2 weeks off. You just play hard.
Right.
You better play hard. Whereas before, though, Kevin, when that Big Ten tournament was in that last weekend, it was the last final before the selection committee, I've had conversations like, well, maybe so-and-so will take it easy. They're already in the NCAA tournament. They don't want to get people hurt. They've got to turn around and play on Thursday. Why would they want to make a run to the Big Ten title? It's just more games. It's more minutes on the legs. Get them ready. Now they've got the rest. And you and I talked about it'll be for next week's show, though. That's definitely going to be our topic. What about this long rest? How will it hurt the teams in the Big Ten? I think it'll hurt them. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag there. Playing this tournament so early is going to hurt some of these teams. It could help, and I'll give my reasons why it could help. But overall, my quick thought is this is not helping the Big Ten as far as being ready to play in the tournament. Not with that much rest. But I was just saying, for Ohio State, what do they really have to play for?
Right.
Big Ten title? Does that really matter? Woo, we were Big Ten champions. Woo. But we got lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Woo. I mean, does the Big Ten title really matter? I guess it does to fans. But when I look back as a Badger fan, I could care less when they won the Big Ten title.
Right.
I wanted to see what they're going to do in the tournament. Who cares? Yeah. Oh, wow, you won this little tournament at the end of the Big Ten regular season. What did it get you?
Right.
A trophy? Whoop-de-doo. I could care less. It doesn't mean a darn thing to me. So will Ohio State go out and be mentally ready to play? Coaches are going to coach them up, but the players, Kevin, I'm going to put myself into these situations. What is the real benefit of this game for me?
Getting a 3 seed.
Yeah, I want to be a champion in the Big Ten tournament. Do I really? I want to be ready. I want to play in the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, now I've got a game or two here, then I get some rest. But if I go out and I will stop myself there. Bust my behind to be a Big Ten champion, does that really matter to me as a basketball player at Ohio State? I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not in their mind. But to me, I mean, that's something that could come up. Are you mentally ready to play knowing that these games don't really matter to you because you've already locked your spot in the NCAA tournament? Now, they could be playing for seeding. If they won the Big Ten tournament, they could get a higher seed. But are the kids really thinking about that? Coaches might be. But are the kids? I mean, they pretty much know they're going dancing. So it'll be interesting to see. So that's why I think Ohio State could be vulnerable. They might not be ready to play. If they're ready to play, yeah, then they could knock off both Penn State and Northwestern. But they're also on the other side of the fence where Penn State or Northwestern could knock them both out. Could knock Ohio State out. So that's my long-winded answer to your question, youngster.
No, I think that, and I just want to mention this with Northwestern. Northwestern was 15-10 going into their final 6 games of the regular season. They're now 15-16. They've lost 6 straight. They lost to Rutgers. They lost to Maryland. They lost to Maryland twice. They lost to Rutgers. They lost to Wisconsin. They just lost to Iowa by 7. And they lost to Michigan State, of course. So Northwestern not playing fantastic.
Maybe they're playing for a lottery pick. Maybe they're tanking.
Yeah, they're going to get the top.
That's the wrong league. That's the NBA.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought they'd get dibs on a top 10 prospect if they tank this year.
Only if they have $100,000. If they got $100,000 to pony up, then they would.
Okay. Well, Arizona, Sean Miller is not happy with you, but I don't think Sean Miller is listening to this podcast. If he is, feel free to tweet us at youngsteroldman, Sean Miller, and tell us why you're salty about the comment we just made. But in any case,
do it today while the old man is irritable. Do it today, because I would really like that fight while I'm irritable.
Yeah. Sean Miller can tweet at us again. Youngster Old Man at Youngster Old Man, all one word. If you think we're stupid, if you think we're brilliant with what we're saying with this Big Ten tournament, again, at Youngster Old Man on Twitter, tweet at us. It doesn't matter what it is, just tweet at us. We'll be interested to see see and hear / only see because it's on a computer screen, your thoughts. But in any case, like you said, Ohio State, if you win the Big Ten tournament, you're a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, let's say. And if you lose your first game to Penn State Northwestern, you're a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament? I mean, so I'm with you. They might not be 100% gung-ho to go, 3 straight days and beat a bunch of good teams in a row. It's like, hey, we're Ohio State. We had this dominant regular season. Let's rest up a little bit against a team like Northwestern, Penn State playing for their lives. So, yeah, I think an upset could happen there for sure. I've got nothing else, Troy, other than to go through this bracket extremely quickly and pick games if you want to. Otherwise, Penn State and Nebraska, they probably have to win and get to the final. Otherwise, teams like, Indiana, Maryland, and below, you've got to win the whole thing. If you're
all right, let's do it. Let's pick it. You're writing them down, though, right? Because I can't write down while I'm doing this. And I'm doing just so people know, my predictions, I didn't sit down. I didn't analyze everything. These are off the cuff from the old man, youngster. So we're going to see how good I do. You write them down. You write your picks and my picks down, and we'll see who's going to do better here. And watch, the way that this will roll out, you and I will probably be pretty darn close.
Probably. I'll write them down. We've got, let's see here. Let me set this up to make sure it's perfect here. Okay, so we have, here we go. There it is. All right, first game, Illinois, Iowa. I guess I'll start it. I think Illinois plays better defense than Iowa. Iowa just beat Northwestern, which throw that out to mean what you want. I think Illinois beats Iowa, though, and moves on to play Michigan in the second round.
All right, so here's what we'll do. You went first, I'll go, and then we'll just kind of rotate. So we'll do 2 in a row.
Right.
That way there's no bias here, and people say, whoa, we're conspiring on our show. So I'm going to go here, youngster. I like the way Iowa shoots and scores. Neither of these teams play defense. This could be triple digits. This could be triple digit game here. I'm taking Iowa. Look at that.
Okay.
We disagree. Game 1. There we go. Play-in game. You got Illinois. I got Iowa.
Cool. Second one. On the bottom in the first round. Again, first round, Big Ten tournament starts Wednesday. All these games, actually, even the quarterfinal games, are going to be on Big Ten Network. I believe the semifinal, I would assume, would be on, although Fox picked up the rights. Could be FS1, could be Fox, could be CBS. I don't really know, to be honest. But first round, second round, quarterfinal games, all on BTN. 14-seeded Rutgers plays 11-seeded Minnesota. I'm going to go with Minnesota because Minnesota.
It's my pick, youngster. Don't be
sorry.
butting in line.
Dude, sorry.
Butting in line there. As much as I jumped on Rutgers bandwagon last year and showing love for a little Rutgers team, I would love to pick Rutgers over Minnesota, but I can't do it. Minnesota advances. Now you may go, youngster, and you get 2 picks in a row. That's how this works. Don't be getting all excited. I know you're going to pick them all right, and all mine are going to be wrong. That's fine.
Yeah.
But there you go. I got Minnesota beating Rutgers.
Okay. So you want me to pick the next 2 games? Is that correct?
Yeah, that way we just move into the games, and that way people can't say, well, you just copied so and so. That way we flip. You go first in one of the games, I go first. Blah blah. It makes sense to you?
I believe so. Okay. So Wisconsin, Maryland.
Who are you picking in that game? You still got to pick, youngster.
Oh, agreed.
Did I confuse you?
No, I don't think so. You want me to go? Let's just okay. So Wisconsin, Maryland, the 8-9 game. You want me to pick that, and then before I turn it back to you, do you want me to pick Michigan versus Illinois, Iowa?
No, who did you pick with Minnesota Rutgers? I interrupted you. Maybe you said. I interrupted.
You're right. Yep, I'm confusing myself now. Yes, I'm with you, Troy. Minnesota beats Rutgers. Minnesota is more talented than Rutgers, despite a suspension. Which, by the way, Reggie Lynch is not playing ever again at Minnesota. That's so his career as a Golden Gopher is done. Amir Coffey, I believe, is back from his injury and playing. I guess I could look more into it, but Minnesota, Rutgers, I'm with you, Troy. I have Minnesota beating Rutgers. So to go on to the second round of this tournament.
There you go. You got her now, youngster. I knew you were a smart little cookie.
I'm okay. So Maryland, the 8 seed, Wisconsin, the 9 seed. I'm going to go, God. I know, Troy, that Maryland has more talent. I guess. I would pick Maryland's talent over Wisconsin, but like you said, Wisconsin's playing teams tough now. You're having Brad Davison, a freshman, play out of his mind. You have Ethan Happ, who's going to be the best player in this game. I thought I was going to go with Maryland, but I'm starting to talk myself into Wisconsin. I'll go with Wisconsin, actually, because Maryland, you've got your big 2 and their sophomores against Ethan Happ, who's, again, the best player in this game. Wisconsin's playing better. They're getting the most from their freshmen. I'll say Wisconsin beats Maryland.
You took the game. You took the game. I've been saying how crappy Wisconsin is all year, how crappy my Badgers have been.
You can pick them one more round. If you want.
Well, they got to be. Yeah, okay. I'm not that crazy, but I guess I said it before, so I think people might have known where I was going with this. I think Maryland is a talented team. I do, but the injuries, and I don't want to get long-winded. We've already won an hour and a half, but this Wisconsin team with all the injuries this year and how young they were. It was a blessing in disguise. I'm okay waving the white flag. I think I waved the white flag after, 6 games, Kevin, on the Wisconsin season?
Yep.
So what it did is it allowed a lot of these younger guys to get a lot of valuable minutes. I actually am okay with the way Wisconsin's playing right now. They just don't have enough talent when they're matching up against other teams. It doesn't mean that they're not going out there and trying hard. They're playing very hard. They're trying to play Wisconsin basketball, and I'm seeing progress. I've talked about it. Any show we talk about, any sport we talk about, I want to see progress. I've seen progress in the Wisconsin program. So I'm okay with this. I think Wisconsin knocks out Maryland in this game. Let's move on to the next game. My pick, youngster. Who we got? Where are we going? What game you going to? Did I lose you, or are you on mute?
Yes, I am on mute. I was wondering why you were talking to me.
Yeah, nothing. You're talking to Gizmo. I know what you were doing. I see you put yourself on mute to get Gizmo's input to take the old man down. I got your tricks now.
Gizmo, is Wisconsin beating Michigan State or not?
No. So is that the game we're picking?
No.
Is that where we're going? Where are you going now?
No. We're staying in the second round, going chronological order here. Michigan, the 5 seed for you, Troy, plays 12-seeded Iowa.
Yeah. Boop, boop, Michigan. Michigan blindfolded wins this game against Iowa. Michigan can score with them. You had mentioned it earlier. It's probably going to be a game in the 80s, could touch the 90s. Yeah. Michigan. The thing is, Michigan can be off and still score more points than Iowa. That's how good I think Michigan can be. And even on an off night, I think they can outscore Iowa. So, yeah, Michigan advances for me.
Yeah, and that's how bad Iowa's defense is as well, I think. For me, it's Michigan versus 13-seeded Illinois. Exact same thing you said. I think Michigan scores it just as well as Illinois does, except they're more talented. So I have Michigan advancing as well. The next game is, and this is set in stone, 7-seeded Penn State versus Northwestern. I think this is where we're going to have our difference because you've been talking up Northwestern, and I think Northwestern is playing like crap this entire season. I think Penn State knows they're on the bubble. They know they have a huge road ahead of them, and they're going to be excited to potentially play Ohio State, hopefully not look past Northwestern, but have a chance at beating Ohio State for the 3rd time this season. I think Penn State gets past Northwestern because, honestly, all year long, Penn State has played better. Penn State's lost their last 3. Northwestern's lost their last 6, but Northwestern's lost to bad teams. Penn State's lost to potentially tournament teams if Nebraska makes it. So Penn State has been and is the better team right now, even though going into the year, both you and I, Troy, thought Northwestern was solidly in, and Penn State might be that sleeper to get in. But right now, I'm pretty damn confident that Penn State beats Northwestern. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
As am I. See how I tricked you? I had to be an unbiased talk show host. That's what I had to be. Northwestern could beat Penn State, but I'm not picking them. I'm picking Penn State. Penn State still has something to play for. Northwestern, it's more about pride right now and that magical run, maybe. I'm just saying they have the talent. Northwestern has the talent to make a magical run if they wanted to. I don't think they want to. There's a disconnect somewhere in that program. And if I'm that coach, I'm really, really mad this year because there's no way that team should have ended up in 10th. I'm picking Penn State, though, youngster. I think they win.
Yeah. Next, before I give my pick, because I'll turn it back to you, is 6-seeded Indiana. Both you and I, Troy, have Minnesota beating Rutgers. So 6-seeded Indiana plays 11-seeded Minnesota in the second round.
I'm not even going to get into why, but Indiana's going to win this one. Indiana's got something to play. I'll just put it that way. Teams that got something to play for are going to come out with a little bit more enthusiasm. As a Minnesota, another disappointing team, a team that you and I thought was another NCAA tournament team. And I know they had suspensions and injuries early, but even when they got guys back, Minnesota's just not played well. They've had spurts where they look good, but I think Indiana has something to play for. They know they've got to go deep in this tournament. Indiana's going to be ready to play. I'm taking Indiana.
Yeah, Minnesota's been a mess this year. Indiana, like you said, they know they have a chance at least to make the NCAA tournament. To both of us, both these teams have to win the Big Ten tournament, but Indiana's been playing at least well all year long. Minnesota, not so much. Just been a huge disappointment. So I'm with you. Indiana gets past Minnesota. The next game, getting into the quarterfinals, so we're down to 8 teams here. Michigan State plays Wisconsin. Michigan State's the better team, like I mentioned before. I think Michigan State cuts down the nets in this tournament. I think Michigan State cuts down the nets in the next tournament. So I've got Michigan State beating Wisconsin. Yeah,
I know Wisconsin played them tough on Sunday. And to them, but to me, that's why I took Wisconsin in that first round, the way that they did play against Michigan State. Thing is, at the end of the day in this game, it doesn't matter if Wisconsin plays a perfect game. They still lose, even if they play a perfect game. If they could turn the ball over 0 times and shoot lights out, Michigan State's still going to win this game. I mean, it'll be close. It'll be close. But even if Wisconsin didn't turn the ball over and shot lights out, I still think Michigan State wins this game. That's how big of a difference I think there is in talent between these two teams. And that's just the way that the dice roll right now. But Michigan State roll. I mean, I don't think they're going to roll over Wisconsin. I think it'll be a tough game. Again, Wisconsin will play their tough D. They'll give Michigan State fits for maybe about 15 minutes. And then at some point, Michigan State will flex their muscles. Talent will take over. Boom, they'll beat Wisconsin and move on.
Yeah. The next game, your pick on this one first. Nebraska, the 4 seed in their first game in the quarterfinal, plays number 5 seed to Michigan for both of us because we have Michigan advancing. So, again, Nebraska versus Michigan.
So, here's the thing. This is where I'd have to be toss-up because now I have a Michigan team. And what are they really playing for at this point? They cruised in that first game, didn't have to really sweat too much. They just went out like a background playground game and shot around and scored 90 points. Nebraska knows they've got to play. This is a game where I could see Nebraska winning, but talent-wise, position by position, Michigan, if they wanted to play, should take care of business. I know people say, well, Nebraska beat Michigan when they beat them in 1970. I mean, that's what it seems like. That's how long ago. I'm taking Michigan in this, even though Michigan may not have any desire to have to play hard. I think Michigan, talent-wise, better than Nebraska. But I'm also thinking the way that this team is going to be coached, there's got to be on that coaching, the psychological coaching aspect of it is, look what we did last year when we played really good in the Big Ten tournament. Look what we did. Look at the damage we can do. Let's prepare ourselves for the NCAA tournament. Therefore, Michigan ends Nebraska's hope of making the NCAA tournament. Taking Michigan here, youngster.
I agree wholeheartedly. Michigan's a more talented team. They can get hotter, and when they get hotter than Nebraska, they can, like I said, they can beat anyone. I think Michigan State's going to have an interesting game against Michigan. I've already let the cat out of the bag of what I think Michigan State's going to do for the rest of the year. They're not losing another game. But Michigan beats Nebraska, like you said. It ends Nebraska's hopes. I really do hope that Nebraska beats Michigan. I want to see Nebraska in the tournament. I honestly do think they're one of the best 68 teams in the country. Anyone in the Big Ten that speaks publicly about them says the same, has said the same. And I trust it. I know I've seen Nebraska. They are one of the top 68 teams, but schedule-wise, again, 1-4 against teams making the NCAA tournament if you count Penn State out. So there's not a lot of great victories for Nebraska, especially if they're one and done in the Big Ten tournament, which both Troy and I think happens. So could very well not happen, but I think Michigan beats Nebraska. And then to move on, we've got Ohio State, the 2 seed. In their first quarterfinal game, they play number 7 seeded Penn State. Penn State, to me, knows that they have to go on this run. They know that they can beat Ohio State. They beat them twice before. We just talked about Ohio State and how if they win the Big Ten tournament, they're a 3 seed. If they lose in the first game, they're a 5 seed at worst. So Penn State's got the world to play for. Ohio State, I guess that's a pride thing, proving you can beat Penn State. But to know that you're in the NCAA tournament, to know that Penn State has beaten you twice before, I'm going with Penn State in the upset here. I've got the Nittany Lions making the semifinals.
Youngster!
Uh-oh. So Penn State, to me, pulls the upset over Ohio State.
Well, you know where I'm going, because you poked the bear. You poked the irritable old man. On an irritable day, you poked me because you stole another one of my picks. Come on. No, I agree with you, and here's why. Penn State, in that first round, that they got the jitters out, the first round jitters out. Now it just built their confidence. Like, okay, now we go. And they're not going to lack confidence against Ohio State, a team they've already beaten twice. They've already got a win. Now they're looking at it going, we're on our road. We're on our road. We'll be the magical run, old man. We're going to be the magical run in the Big Ten tournament. They take down Ohio State. Penn State does. Let's move on.
Moving on, Purdue, the 3 seed. For our bracket, Purdue plays Indiana, who is the 6th seed. So Purdue, Indiana in a 3-6 matchup in the quarterfinal.
So I always have some crazy pick in a tournament, so you know where I'm going with this one. Purdue, to me, Kevin, has become human, but the thing is, I'll probably pick them some. Talking next week, I'm going to, again, let the cat out of the bag. Rest for some of these teams is going to be a blessing in disguise. Purdue, they need it. I don't know what happened to them here in the last month of the season, but they've become human. Indiana, again, has played a game. Purdue's sitting and watching. Purdue, if they win the Big Ten tournament, are they going to be a number 1 seed? Probably not. Maybe if they beat Michigan State, I don't know, but could they be a solid 2? Yeah. I just don't like the way Purdue's playing right now. And Indiana, again, a game under their belt, knowing what they need to do to get into the NCAA tournament, they've got to win it. They've got to win it. They're going to give everything they got. Are they more talented than Purdue? No. No way. Not even close. But I think Indiana pulls off the upset against Purdue.
Very interesting. So I guess I have to switch that. I was getting ahead of myself, and I had you down for Purdue over Indiana. So with that said, we'll move on to the semifinal, and we both have.
Who are you
Michigan.
picking? You didn't pick the winner.
Sorry, I get ahead of myself here. Purdue against Indiana. I have Purdue winning. So that's our, I guess, big difference to this point. You've got Indiana going on a little run. I do not. Purdue's, like you said, Purdue's the more talented team. Inside, Purdue should kill Indiana. They should. I think.
Well, kill is a compliment. They should annihilate them inside.
I think. No, go ahead.
There's always that game where I just go off in left field, and everybody's like, "What are you doing, old man?" This is that game. This is that game where I'm just looking at it, saying, "You know what? When a team is desperate, things happen." And Purdue, for them, they should just try to pound the ball inside all day against Indiana and score like 70 points in the paint. And they could. But something's telling me they're not going to. They're going to try to get fancy. You're going to let Indiana hang around. And you know what happens when you let a team of lesser talent hang around? They beat you. That's what's going to happen. Indiana's going to pull off this upset, youngster.
Yeah. I was curious about this because I was curious to look it up. Indiana played Purdue once during the regular season. Indiana was at home. They had a lead at halftime, 37-35, and then Purdue went on to win the game by 7. But like I just mentioned, Purdue should kill Indiana on the inside, and Troy said that's putting it lightly. On the boards especially, but on the boards, in the first matchup, Indiana out-rebounded Purdue. It was by 1, but Indiana should not out-rebound Purdue. So that's insane to me when it happened. It should not happen. Even if it does happen, Purdue has shown that they can beat Indiana somehow. Indiana also shot 50% from the field in that game, and Purdue still won. So I don't know what happened there, but I've got Purdue over Indiana. The next matchup is Michigan State and Michigan for both of us. And this is my pick, I believe, first. Michigan State plays Michigan, and like I said before, I think Michigan State does not lose another game the rest of this year. So that's my pick. As to why, I just think that Michigan State is the more talented team. I think they can play in the 80s if they need to. I think they play top 5 level defense in the country. There are teams like Villanova, Virginia, and Cincinnati that play crazy good defense as well. But Michigan State, just talent-wise, the NBA bodies, the length, I think when they want to, they can lock teams down. I think they'll lock Michigan down better than Michigan will lock them down. So I've got Michigan State advancing past Michigan.
I concur. That's all I want to say. Michigan State.
Yeah. Next is let's see, we both had Penn State over Ohio State. So you have Penn State, the 7 seed, in the semis against 6-seeded Indiana.
Ooh, I had you on mute. So, see, here you go. Now you got these two teams battling. Two hungry hippos, is what I'll call them, ready to battle to get to the title game. Who's going to prevail in this one right here? This, to me, is a toss-up. But all of a sudden, I've got this screwed-up bracket in the Big Ten tournament, and I think Indiana, based on the level of competition they played in the non-conference, is going to pay off. I think Indiana advances over Penn State.
Whew. Okay. So we go to the final, which is for you, Michigan State against Indiana.
Well, who did you pick in that game?
I keep skipping this. I don't understand why I keep skipping it.
Because you're so intrigued by my answers.
I know, I am. I have Purdue playing Penn State. And so, yeah, Purdue, Penn State, unfortunately, and again, I hope that an upset happens. I hope Nebraska beats Michigan, and that propels them to the NCAA tournament. I hope Penn State upsets both Ohio State and Purdue, and that gets them to the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, I know that Purdue is the better overall team, talent-wise. I'm going pretty boring toward the end of this here, Troy, and you're going more exciting. I hope it gets more exciting than what I'm picking. But
it always does somewhere, but it also gets vanilla at times, too.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Sometimes you got to go scratch. That's the way it works. Yeah. Not the old man, not on an irritable headache day. Maybe I'll just blame it on my headache.
I'm sure it'll be a nice little blend of both of our brackets. We'll have some Cinderella. You're taking Indiana. It could very well be a team like Michigan, a team like Penn State, a team like Northwestern. You're going Indiana's route, and I give you props for that. It usually happens every single year where there is a Cinderella-esque story, not necessarily to win the whole thing, but go a couple rounds probably further than people would think on the outside. But, yeah, I've got Purdue beating Penn State. I just think Purdue is – I think both Michigan State and Purdue can win the entire thing. Like you said, Troy, I think Purdue could absolutely use the rest more so than Michigan State does. But regardless, all these teams are going to receive a bunch of rest pretty soon. I've got Penn State or Purdue over Penn State, which I guess it leads to my final of Michigan State and Purdue, which, like I mentioned before, I have Michigan State cutting down the nets in this, and the next nets, that's interesting. Couple words in a row. Michigan State beats Purdue to win the Big Ten final. I think both these teams are juggernauts. If it plays out that way, I'm watching every single second of it. I'll watch probably every single second of it regardless. But Michigan State over Purdue. Michigan State's just playing better as of late. I think it's absolutely possible Purdue could win this whole thing. But Troy thinks there's a possibility that Indiana could beat Purdue. They could beat Rutgers, Minnesota. They could beat Ohio State, Penn State, Northwestern. A combination.
Yes, but they're not going to beat Michigan State. But if they get to the NCAA or the Big Ten tournament, I think they get a bid. I think they've propelled themselves into the NCAA tournament at this point. They could. They could.
To Indiana getting to the final and losing to Michigan State, you think that gets them in?
That would get them, 22 wins?
they would have their overall record was pretty poor. They 1, 2, 3 extra wins. So Indiana would be at 19 and 15
overall. Erase that. Their season's done. Michigan State ends their season. I thought they were going to be over 20. Nope, they're done. All right. There we go. Michigan State wins. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. So no insane ending for Troy's bracket. I go pretty boring again, and Troy goes a little more interesting.
Up to the final, but Michigan State's a better team. So now that we've went 2 hours, youngster, what else do you got? Because I think we should probably let the listeners go.
Yes, that's it. I'm done. I'll shut up. Big Ten tournament again Wednesday, the 28th, February 28th, this Wednesday. It starts, the first round goes until March 4th on Sunday. That's when the championship will be. The first 3 rounds of this tournament are all on Big Ten Network.
It's all good, youngster. The irritable old man is ready to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for listening for 2 hours, folks. We do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed our banter. We covered a lot of topics today, paying players, Big Ten tournament, NCAA news. Holy cow, youngster. We just went at it today. But again, I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, at TroyRobert967, at KidCunny, KIDCUNI, and then make sure you follow our show handle. If you like what we do a number of shows, XFL, Pittsburgh Market, Cleveland Market, sports in general. Follow us at Youngster Old Man, all one word. Have a good night, everybody. We'll get back with you next week.